Robbie Samuels, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cameron.
I hear you've made a career out of developing croissants. What makes croissants so special?
Well, it kicked off my career. My career is transformed well beyond that, but I became known widely, globally, for this concept of croissants versus bagels, which comes from a talk that I did for over a decade called Art of the Schmooze. The title of my first book, which came out in 2017, is called Croissants versus Bagels. I was invited to do a TEDx talk, which was Hate Networking, Stop Bageling and Be the Croissant, which got picked up by NPR about a year and a half later. What is the croissant? Well, when you walk into a networking space and you're trying to figure out who to talk to, and everyone's standing around in these tight clusters, these shoulder to shoulder huddles that are impossible to break into, it's awful. But if one person in one of those circles shifts their body language to make space for you to join, that is the croissant. And so it's a concept, it's philosophy that if you're going to bother to leave your house to meet people, which is why we are going to these conferences and events, we should have the body language to be approachable, and we should look for those that do. And it is just like a small piece of a much larger strategy that I was offering, but it was very, very sticky as a concept, like croissants and jam, and very memorable and easy to pass along. The TEDx talk came out in January of 2020, and I thought that I was to be this overnight success 10 years in the making. But turns out no one 2 months later needed to know how to network at events. We were all at home. And
Right.
so it kind of went dormant. But I had a big launch strategy for my first book. So I applied the same principles to launching this TEDx talk. So I aimed for 1,000 views and 100 comments in that first 30 days or so. And I hit that metric. And then it went dormant. And then in the fall of 21, an NPR podcast reached out about me being on their show because they knew people needed that skill set again. And that got repurposed to a couple of their NPR shows, and it just kind of went around the world. And I was getting tagged on posts in Germany, and I was like, "Hi, that's me." And if you search on Google anything related to croissants and networking or bagels and networking, I'm going to come up. So I own the concept in that sense, but my business had to evolve because there was a period of time where in-person networking, just like croissants or bagel wise, was not a thing. And so a lot changed.
That's that's pretty wild. I'm definitely interested in what it felt like to have that anxiety about becoming the overnight success, and then maybe even a little bit of it not being realized the way you were hoping. But I'm also very curious. In my show, I am what I like to call an information enthusiast and a tinkerer. So I build my whole framework around figuring out how to figure things out, figuring out how to get them done, and then figuring out how to show other people. And it sounds like you figured out a really, really cool practical, which is the best thing, way to address the networking issues of figuring out which circle to go into and how to figure out who's open to talk. That's the big, big, big terrifying thing. I experienced it in the beginning of my career, and I'm curious, like how you came to that conclusion or how you developed the framework. Was it fully incidental?
So my book came out in 2017, but I had started speaking on the topic even before I left my day job. So I was speaking on the topic for 5 years while I was still employed, and then 5 years when I was trying to build a business. And the way I got started is that I did some speaking in college, and then there was like a 10-year period where I didn't. And I was working at a nonprofit, and I started organizing these meetup groups called Socializing for Justice. We brought together like-minded lefty, progressive, social justice folks. A year in, we had sort of noted who our regular attendees were, and we invited those regular attendees, which were not even 20 people, maybe 17 people, out for coffee. We had no money. They were paying for their own snacks. And we talked about what we were creating together. And we asked them if they could come a little bit early. And they said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And I said, "Great," because there's always the new people who come early, and I'm busy hanging up things. And I need you to just say hello. And can you help at registration? And can you hand out this bingo sheet? And yeah, yeah. And then I said, "Oh, then like for the first 30 minutes, can you like schmooze and just kind of like be work in the room?" And I got a lot of deer in headlights responses because it turns out of the 17 or so people, most of them were shy and or introverted. And the reason they were coming to our events was because they were so welcoming and inclusive. Now, this was in Boston, Massachusetts, which is known for being kind of hard to break into compared to a place like San Francisco. It's like year 3, you found your friends for life and they are really your ride or die. But the first few years, it's kind of hard to figure out who to even hang out with socially because people aren't like so open. We were being counterculture and creating an immediately like you're part of this. And I had to start coaching them on how to do this. Now, the person I was dating at the time who was helping me run the group was a shy introvert. And I was trying to help her show up more at her job so she was be seen for new opportunities. And so she took a bunch of notes. And those notes became the basis of the talk, Art of the Schmooze, which I then tested on this small group of regulars. And then I offered it for a couple of years to a few other grassroots groups in our area. And finally, in 2009, like 3 years later, I was invited to speak professionally, not on that topic. I had a friend who knew that I had been speaking, casually, mostly for no money here on topic of networking, but that my background was I was a fundraising professional. She asked me to come and present to her fundraising to her national board of directors in DC. I got paid a whopping $200 and they paid my flight and I had to room with my friend, but I billed them $400 and gave them a friends discount, and thus began my career as a professional speaker in 2009. And 5 years later, I left my day job and focused on that full time and was trying to figure out my new audience. So I didn't want to stick around with the nonprofit world. And, I was doing a lot with foundations. Like I thought I made it big when foundations were hiring me. So I started a podcast, and the podcast was called On the Schmooze. And then the book came out, Croissants versus Bagels. Then I did a group coaching program that I piloted. Then I hired my friend and mentor, Dory Clark, to be a coach. And she said, you have to write for Harvard Business Review and do a TEDx talk. So that was my 2019 effort. So now we're several years into me being self-employed. And I really did think like January 2020, like I've now got, I've got the book, I got the TEDx, I've got my group coaching program, I'm doing all these things, I'm speaking professionally. And then it kind of went dormant. And I know you're going to ask me what happened next, and I'll let you do that. But like, I really had a path, and it was developed off of wanting to help these people create an inclusive environment. We ran that group, by the way, for 11 years. We grew to thousands of members. At the end, whatever money we had left, we donated to a great grassroots foundation that was able to spread the money out to great organizations. It was a real honor to put that time in.
That's a wild ride. Okay, so if it didn't pan out, and of course, what happened next, I know, and what we're going to get to the bulk of it here is that now you're coaching people to write their books. A question I want to ask down the road here, and maybe we can just jump right into it. I was curious about the book writing because I've heard this from a couple of different folks now. It seems to be one of the new ways of marketing in the brand strategy is writing a book. And my first instinct, because I'm writing a book, does it have to be any good?
So I'll tell you that I wrote my first book in 2017 because I had joined 2 years earlier the National Speakers Association. Again, I was ready to be a professional speaker when I left my day job. I immediately signed up for this association. And you hear this like drumbeat. You need a book, you need a book, you need a book. Now, they don't tell you necessarily what to do with the book. They don't talk about the marketing of the book or how to leverage your network, which is the stuff I really focus on. I'm not really in the world of helping people write their book. I can refer you to people for that. I'm about leveraging it and launching it and using it to get reviews and creating a pipeline. So I have this book and I like stumble my way through creating my first, group program. When the pandemic happens, I actually host my first virtual happy hour on March 13th, 2020, in response to the fact that this is starting to happen and trying to figure out, well, how do I translate the work that I do, which is all in person? But I had this belief, and I still do, that events are about content and connection. And I needed to find a way. And at that time, I did not know what the way was for virtual events to not be boring webinars, but to also be about content and connection. And so I started by hosting a virtual happy hour. And it turned out, even on that first day, that I had skills for virtual facilitation that others didn't. I had been running small groups for a while. I had been trained to run virtual masterminds. I had an instinct and I had been given some time to practice some stuff. I knew nothing about the Zoom settings beyond the basics. I actually thought you had to pay extra for Zoom breakout rooms, couldn't think of why I needed them, right? So there was a lot in my head that I didn't know and I needed to learn. That business took off so fast, and by the, I don't know, 8-10 months later, I had become a virtual event design consultant and an executive Zoom producer. I had a thriving six-figure business by the end of 2020, all new revenue streams. I created a certification program, I was being hired by companies. So people kept saying, how are you doing that? So I wrote my second book, Small List, Big Results: Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size of Your Email List, because I am a business coach and I followed my own best advice about how to test an idea by doing research calls. So just to get back to your question, yes, it has to be a good book. That is sort of my main assumption when a
Good.
client comes to me. It is a useful book, because what is the point of putting crap? Because that's permanently on your record. I mean, your school record is long gone. This follows you. So if you write a really crap toxic book, whether it's AI written or you just don't even bother to get it edited by a professional, and you throw it up there, you will probably attract some negative reviews, formatting issue reviews. This book needed another 3 editors. English must not be your first language.
Oh
Like,
my god.
just real negative stuff. So yes, it has to be not just a good book, but a valuable book. So that second book that I wrote, people really did want to know. And I had this process called Wake Up Your Network, which is how to identify likely prospects and referral partners from your existing network, do research calls with them to validate an idea, go away, tinker with the idea, make it into a program, come back and ask a few of those people if they'd like to pilot it, and then move from there. And this does not require ads or updating your website. It's like just going with people who kind of already have that trust with you and meeting their needs. I finally, in March of 2023, came out with my third book, which is a book about how to use Zoom. And by then I had 3 years of expertise running these Zoom events of varying sizes. I mean, I was using 4 and 5 day 3-track, 2-track conferences. I had created a certification program that I ran for a few years where I had Zoom producers I had certified who were either working for me or out on their own, so that I could have multiple tracks happening. And so that is my biggest book. It's like a really huge resource guide, how to, and it's called Break Out of Boredom: Low Tech Solutions for Highly Engaging Zoom Events. And that was the moment where actually my business was starting to tip a little bit, and the Zoom stuff really wasn't happening as much. I'm really glad I wrote the book. It's still really useful. A lot of people are using it. I honestly think a lot of 6 and even 7-figure entrepreneurs need it, because in the interim, in 2024, 2025, I've been on virtual events that were run by these 7-figure entrepreneurs where things went wrong. Now, if it had been 2020, we'd all have grace, but it's not. Like, you should know whether your account has Zoom breakout rooms enabled. You should have someone else managing your chat and keeping an eye on it, so that if people can't hear you, they can contact you to say, we're not here. We should have someone who knows how to manage their slides and knows to not just hide behind their slides, but actually speak directly to the camera now and again. I mean, super basic stuff that we all should have figured out in the first year, if not the first 6 months of doing it. So I do think it's still needed, but I needed to come up with another way forward. And I was starting to test in 23 and 24 some different ideas. In 23, I must have tested like 3 different ideas at the end of 23. And this one thing kept coming up, which was that all 3 of the books that I had done had hundreds of reviews on Amazon. And I don't just mean the stars ratings, I mean written reviews. And that's a very rare thing for someone who's not a household name. You know, how did I do that? Everyone wanted to know. So I would build these big launch teams. At the end of the launch, I would always share a separate private event for them about my process. And then I would give that to other people or sell it to other people over the years. And I would create a new one for each cycle. So 6 months after my third book comes out, I'm having dinner in New York City with my friend, mentor, and sometimes coach Dory Clark and some friends of ours. And I am lamenting in like a first world problem kind of way that the book that had come out 6 months earlier was at 243 written reviews. And I just really wanted it to hit 251 so I could say over 250. Wah, wah,
Right.
right? Like, cry me a river. And she's very subtle. Like, this is not someone I talk to nonstop. It's not someone I check in with weekly, but she has cuts through and says things to me that has transformed my life on multiple occasions. And she just looked at me and said, "Why are you not a book launch coach?" And I had realized she'd asked that question 3 or 4 times in 7 years. Now, 7 years earlier, I declined to pursue it because I was trying to become a networking expert. And I had a one track mind and I was a singular focus and I didn't want to be known for other things. And people did start to know me for that. And it was actually, in my mind, taking away from my ability to be known for this thing that I want to get paid for. So now we've fast forward 7 years, and I'm now a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I have embraced the idea of having lots of hyphens after my name. I am not a singular thing. I have many ways of showing up and offering value in the world. Well, let's see. Literally in that split second, all this happens in my head. I will need to build like a referral network. Do I know the right people for a referral network? Do I know enough authors? So a month later, it's November. It's 2 weeks before Black Friday, and I have this epiphany to build out this cross promotion for Kindle for Black Friday. And my assistant and I built the plane while we were flying it, and I had a free option and a $25 option. Made a few $100, gave it to my assistant, proved that I do know authors. We had 50 people in the first campaign. And in December, I made $15,000 in unexpected revenue. And I know it was unexpected because I'd already given my numbers to my accountant and I had to revise. And she was like, "You owe me more money in taxes. That's a good problem." And I was like, wow. And it wasn't from that campaign, it was from people who I engaged with who hired me either to help them with their book launch, which was still not a full offer. It was like a thing I was sort of still doing for friends, not something I had on a website, and or coaching. People hired me just for business strategy because they were like, "You can help me with this." So I started to do research calls, right? I'm a research kind of guy. And a month into that, January of 2024, I was like, okay, everyone's saying that my concept of doing launches is unique, but it makes sense. And this referral network I'm looking for entrepreneurial authors who are writing books to grow their business does not exist. And people want to know how they can join it. So I started piloting what became the BizBook Pub Hub, which is now this enormous resource ecosystem. I am a small piece of it. I host events, I do a podcast. We do these campaigns 3 times a year that are Kindle flash sales, which is what that that campaign back in 23 became. And I finally came out with my fourth book, which is about launching a book, which is a very meta thing to do. And it's called Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue. And it had to have a really strong launch because it's a book about getting reviews. And I'm very proud to say that it has 242 written reviews right now, came out just a few months ago. And most of those reviews came out in the first month of the book being in existence. I had a goal of 200 reviews and definitely was able to hit that and keep going. But I'm not stopping. I want to have hundreds, 500. I want to have 1,000 reviews. It's a really good book. And I'm trying to change the conversation with authors about what metrics matter and what are vanity metrics that are a waste of your time, money, and effort. And that brings us today. So now you've got my
Let's
whole
get
life story, Cameron. You can sell it
right.
to the
Oh,
highest bidder.
I'm excited and I really like it. We all have, everybody who's not yet a success, an overnight success such as yourself. We don't know the nitty gritty, and you see some of these like 30 under 30 and sports and rock star people. You get to learn a little bit about what they've done and how they did it, and they're wildly talented in some weird thing that nobody could fathom. But everybody has something they're good at, right? And kinda I'm noticing a pattern with you. It's not something you knew you were good at. It's something maybe your coach or other people that you interact with frequently told you you were good at. Understanding when and how to pivot into your sweet spot of what you know how to do and what you can teach people how to do. Again, one of the themes that I really wanna get into here is everybody knows something really, really cool, really, really helpful, really, really valuable, and you can learn how to teach it to someone, but then the next step is learning how to monetize the teaching, I guess, right? And that's where the books come in.
Books offer credibility right off the bat. If someone hears you have published a book, that immediately puts you in a different category. There are different studies out in the world, but one that gets quoted a lot is 82% of people say they want to write a book and only 1% has. So clearly it's something that a lot of people think about, very few people follow through. So it shows that you have follow through. There's part of it. Or it shows you have money to throw at a problem, depending on how you achieve that.
Yeah.
Um, And it's getting easier and easier to self-publish and hybrid publish, and you don't have to go through the gatekeepers of a traditional publishing house, which is good and bad. You have to really make sure the book has quality and has an audience and has a purpose, that it's tied to a business. I focus specifically on those kinds of authors. If it's a fiction book or something else, like I'm not, that's different. But I think sometimes people are so swept up in the process of trying to get the book written. There's this analogy people use a lot with books. They say it's like running a marathon. But the thing is, at the end of the marathon, the runner gets to stop. It's really a triathlon. The first leg is the swim, and that's getting the book written, getting the ideas out of your head. The second leg is, sopping wet. You run over to a bike and then start biking, and that is the editing, formatting, and the publishing of the book, which is this whole other thing you have to learn about and get support for. And finally, there's the final leg, which is the run, and that is the launch and the ongoing marketing. And people just don't prepare for that last part very much when they're stuck trying to just get through the tangible next steps of getting the book to be a book. And I get people who contact me all the time to talk about a relaunch. And then I'm like, you didn't really launch the first time. I mean, we could actually just run my launch sequence. Like, no one knows that, like, your mom bought a copy. That's great. Like, how do I help you? But asking them this question I always do these complimentary 30-minute book launch brainstorming calls. And I'm like, tell me how the book fits in with this overall business. Like, if I'm excited about the book, what's the next step? How do I find you? What's the next thing I can do with you? I I don't mean it to be, but it's a gotcha question. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I knew you were gonna ask me that." I'm like, "Yeah, by the time you come to me, you usually have a book already or you're close to publishing." I am open to meeting with people who are just getting started because I can give them so much insight into what they could be thinking differently about. And I can introduce them to my referral partners that I now have through the BizBook Pub Hub if they need that support. And then, whatever time period later, they get referred back to me when it's ready to launch. But I think a book is a credibility, but a book often has no reviews on it. Like, most people publish a book, and that is the end of the story. And that's a shame because that's not enough to differentiate yourself when you're being considered as a speaker, and the speaker is also an author, right? So now what's the tiebreaker? Well, one of you has 3 reviews, 2 with the same last name as you, and the other one has 80, right? Like, that other one has 80, that is social proof that's showing the event host that you have a really good idea that people find useful, that you have an audience that is approving of it. So where the reviews come from, though, matter, because sometimes people hear, "Oh, reviews are important," and they come up with, I would say, less than ethical ways of getting reviews. But if the reviews are not coming from your likely prospects and referral partners within your existing network, you're not building a pipeline. And that's the piece I focus on with people because I'm a strategist first. So you were saying, like, what's the thing I do? I'm a strategist and I'm a relationship kind of guy. Like, I believe in leveraging networks. It's not how much would this cost to fix, it's who do I know that can help me? Like, that's a framework that I have. I also believe in showing up and offering value, and that was my mantra back in March 2020 when I realized everything I thought I knew was gonna change. I didn't yet know I was gonna get into Zoom and become the Zoom guy, but, like, how do I show up and offer value? These are some of the ways I piece things together that other people aren't seeing because 'cause I'm a big picture guy who can get super in the weeds, and then I just wanna simplify the process for those coming behind me.
That's really, really exciting and interesting. I think, people think about reviews for products all the time. And I read a lot of books, and I don't think I've ever looked at a review for a book. I may look at the star count and then like the number next to it, like 4.5 stars at 300 reviews is better than 5 stars at 2 reviews. Feels a little more weighty. And I think that's what you're getting at,
Honestly,
right?
that is even baseline that is you checking reviews. So studies have shown that more than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase. Some of my author friends think that's even higher for books. You may not read all the reviews, but you might scroll down, especially if you're like, I'm not sure if this book's for me. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you need it. When you're like, you stumble across it. No one told you about it. And you're like, I was looking for a book on this topic. I found these 3. The descriptions seem okay. Like, how do you decide which one? And you're like, you look, and then one of them's like, this one has tons of formatting issues and needed 3 more editors, and you're like, okay, not that one, or you just look at the overall count. I do for products all the time, where you're like you said, I don't know how many
Yeah,
written reviews there are at a glance, but I can tell this one has on like a couple of hundred reviews and this one has 4,000. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of people. Now on books, the scale is just very different. If you hit even 20 written reviews on a book, you are actually putting yourself in a different category than a majority of authors. I aim
really.
for 50 or more with my clients because that's a whole nother category. And if you set up a process to get 50 or more from your network of prospects and referral partners, you are possibly setting yourself up to hit 100 or more. And then again, you're in another category. I just helped a client launch this week. She has 127 reviews on her book. Her launch party was Wednesday, and she had 119 as of Wednesday. 6 more have come in. And her rating, the 5 stars to written review ratio, is at 100%, which is amazing. And it means that she did a launch focused on written reviews. And I want to compare that to some bigger name people who may have on the surface thousands of reviews, but when you click through there, that 6,500 reviews is actually, 600 people or 300 people who've taken time. Not that 300 and 600 is a small number, but it is not the same as, 6,500. And if they have 6,500 reviews, the guy I'm thinking of has sold like 30 million copies. So, percentage
Yes.
wise, her 127 came from, a few hundred books being sold. In fact, she had 207 people on her launch team. So she's at like 60% of her launch team, which is incredible. Usually about a third will take action. Getting reviews is really hard. And yet, if you're doing it in a strategic way, it's creating other revenue and media opportunities. And so I have built, I founded this BizBook Pub Hub, and I host all these collaborative efforts for authors and for the experts who support them because I want to change the conversation away from trying to hit number one bestseller to that doesn't matter, and let's do the things that make the book as a business asset as opposed to just a book that's sitting there.
Okay. Yeah, and then it sounds like we don't really care if the general public is seeing and buying it because you have a target audience anyway. That's going to end up giving you money in your proper business.
What I would say is if you go with a regular traditional model, I don't just mean that you work with a traditional publisher, but just like the model that is the norm in this world, you go from publishing a book to publicizing it through PR and marketing. So Wiley would do that, but so would a hybrid publisher, right? Like that's like the plan. They're missing the launch. And here's what happens. You're sending people to the book sales page. You're paying to send people to the book sales page as soon as it goes live without taking the time to have any sales or in particular any reviews in the book. So like a Wiley or another traditionally published, book, they focus on you doing pre-orders of your paperback for, 20 some odd dollars, which is harder to do than a 99-cent Kindle book. And there's no emphasis at all on getting reviews. And they want you to try to get a bunch of pre-orders in a small time frame in order to hit number one on Amazon before the book has officially been published. But again, you don't know where those are coming from. You can't confirm who bought and who didn't. There's no effort to then convert those people into people who are writing a review. There's no process for helping them do it. And it's not something people do naturally. As much as there are 90% of us checking reviews, there's not even 1% of us that are writing reviews regularly. I actually have a friend years ago. This Yelp.com had this thing called Elite Yelp, Elite Yelpers. I don't know if they still do, but I had a friend. She's probably still doing this. She has a lot of opinions, and she literally would write reviews for like the bus route, the train station, the pedestrian path through this park, the park, right? Like this intersection. I mean, she wrote reviews for everything nonstop. Very, very rare. I know a lot of people. I don't know anyone else is doing that. So most of us, unless it is an awful experience or an incredible experience, we don't bother. And there's a lot in between. So those reviews not being collected is the problem. And the paying people, because like I get pitched by PR companies to have people on my podcast. I've had a show for like 10 years now. And I had a show for a long time, 8.5 years, was focused on networking and leadership. And guys would pitch me, always, always guys, I have to say, because my show was two-thirds women. So I was very aware of this. I was like, well, I only have 14 spots for these guys every year. So like, it's got to be a really good person. And they'd have a book on networking. I'm like, oh, I definitely want to check this out. This seems like a really good fit. They have some really valuable insights. Eight, eight ratings and 5 reviews. It's a book on networking. I mean,
And
what?
you can't even network the book.
And you paid this PR company and this hybrid publisher, and I know the prices these people charge. You spent over 20 grand in the last 6 months, and you didn't leverage your own network. Like, forget social proof. It's the opposite. I was like, I can't in good faith invite you on. I don't believe you, like,
Yeah. The
so
book might be good, but you're not
the
gonna
book
check
might be good, but like your launch was so bad that I was like, how do you not tell your own people? So I do think there's a point where you want to tell beyond your own group, but there's this thing called a soft launch that I do, which is between the publication date and the date 2.5, 3 weeks later. That is the big promotional launch day. And the goal is that you collect reviews in advance of publication based on a PDF of the book, an advanced reader copy. You collect reviews, and then when the book is published, you ask your launch team to get the reviews on in that short time frame. And then you have a launch party, and then you promote it out widely. So that way, if media or prospects come across it at that future point, it already has those 50 reviews or 20 reviews or whatever number you're aiming for. My book is all my books are very DIY. I liked your concept of this podcast because I'm really about practical strategies that you can implement right away. In all of my books, I basically describe the apple. I don't give it to you. If you coach with me, I will give it to you, right? There's a difference, but you could absolutely take what I've written and act on it. And I was just telling a friend that one of the coolest byproducts of this book, it's only been out like 3 months, is people who are using the process in my launch your book, and they're not hiring me, right? I'm not cheap, so they're not hiring me, but they're getting results that are exciting to them, and they're tagging me on social media, and I'm on their launch team, and I'm seeing them using because they are also on they're so funny because I only gave one example in the book of an actual email, and it was the welcome. I was thinking it was the invitation email, and I described a little bit about what you'd want to talk about in it. But they're on other launches I've done. So they're literally taking the format of the emails they've received as launch team members, and they're regurgitating it and putting it back out there. And it's a scale, it's different level of scale from like, I'm dealing with hundreds and hundreds of names. Maybe they're dealing with dozens, but they're really happy that they're doing something, and I'm so proud of them, honestly. It's like they didn't just publish the book and hope for the best and then start paying someone to do PR and marketing for them. They're hopefully getting some good conversations from all of the activity that's happening. So
Interesting.
that's the other thing you do with a book is that you reach people, you share a message, and you create an opportunity for people to learn from you, even though they're not paying you. But then those same people become great referral partners because they can tell their fellow author friends, Robbie's stuff works. And if that person's like, that looks great, but I don't have time to manage that, that's becomes a great prospect for me.
Interesting. That's 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 wonderful. I like your hitting the nail on the head, like practical, step by step. Maybe even getting to the point of guided examples
Mhm.
out there for free is going to make a huge difference on how many people can get their own thing going. I love to see that you're excited about it and not trying to shut them down and make them pay you particularly. But I really like the frameworks. I really like your idea. I've personally delved into a lot of these self-publishing type companies. I've interviewed with a lot of hand holder, independent publishers, all kinds of stuff. And I don't think anybody's said anything about reviews. I've heard a lot about Amazon bestsellers and, you're supposed to give away the first 1,000 copies anyway and all this other stuff. So that the focus on reviews is wild to me because that's how the rest of business works based on all the research I've been doing for the last year. And for some reason, even me, I'm neck deep in researching self-publishing and I haven't seen it yet. So you truly are doing something unique and actually very exciting.
Cameron, that is so validating. I actually had a moment with ChatGPT when I was writing my book, and I had all these transcripts, and I asked it to turn it into language that I could edit because all the timestamps, and then I was feeding it back in and asking like, is it flow? Is there a missing gap? And it kept correcting this piece around the publication date, and it kept wanting it to be the launch date. Like it kept saying, and I was finally I explicitly was like, I do things differently. Let me explain. And I like wrote out how I think everything I just said. And it said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, ChatGPT, for ego
That's how he starts
stroking."
every
Right.
response.
And
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, can you do a lit review and find other experts who talk about book launches and book marketing and tell me how my process compares?" And it came up with like 6 names. I recognize at least 3 of them, bigger name people, and it broke down like what you do and then what they do, and none of them did what I did. And I was like, "Oh, I wish I could quote you." Like that, like I was
Yeah.
like, that was really good to know. I was like, I had the book hadn't come out yet, I was trying you try to put out something unique. I think what you're saying makes sense. Like reviews matter for products in the rest of the world. Like why are they not mattering here? I also want to say I agree that we're not here to make money from our books. I think that's also a misnomer some people have. And if you're a business owner and you're writing a book to help you grow your business, speaking, coaching, consulting, mark your book to 99 cents at the beginning. Get those early reviews. The point is people buy the book for 99 cents and then leave a review. It's now a verified purchase review. That that purchase of 99 cents counts towards your sales ranking. If you only have your Kindle version available for the first few weeks before your official launch date, then all sales will come in on that one book type, and you aren't going to diffuse your sales because the sales rankings are tied to the format. So paperback rankings is different than Kindle rankings. But if you only have Kindle, now I'm not a fan of bestseller campaigns. They're bogus in my opinion. I actually think they're worse than that. People are actually scheming people out of money for results that don't matter. Getting number one bestseller is not going to change the success of your book, discoverability of your book, or your business having more money in the bank account. In fact, a campaign will cost you money if someone charges you, which is unfortunate. I have hit number one 37 times across 4 books in 4 countries. I do not identify as an international bestselling author because that should mean something. And there are people in the world who are hitting number one in Canada, number one in the US, and declaring themselves on their book covers, in their bios, and on their website, number one international bestselling authors. And then I have this friend who wrote a book called Exactly What to Say. His name is Phil M. Jones. Has been translated to like, I don't know, 30 languages. It's sold 3.5 million copies. That is an international best-selling author, and I don't think we should equate the two. So what I did is unique and commendable, but I used the whole sentence. 37 best-selling categories across 4 books in 4 countries. Like that, like all that is true. But none of those ribbons were long lasting. They're all fleeting. I have this one great screenshot where my book is number one in marketing research in front of a Seth Godin book and a Malcolm Gladwell book.
Dang.
And I put the book in there. This is my last book. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to hit number one, given that Malcolm Gladwell had a new book out called Revenge of the Tipping Point. So both of his books were selling like hotcakes. Seth Godin had a new book, and one of his older books had had a resurgence. How am I, whatever. But for a
Yeah.
moment in time, I grabbed the screenshot, very happy with it. It's up on social media. It's fleeting. It's gone. You know what is there? 42 reviews.
There you
Okay.
go.
Like that is longer lasting. And so all this push, so have a plan for making money from something related to the book and then figure out how to get the book in people's hands. The way to make money from a book directly is bulk sales. And the way to do bulk sales is to have the social proof where people want to hire you, speak or coach or consult, and therefore
Uh-huh.
buy 25, 50, 100 plus books from you, in which case you can buy it through the author copy and probably make a nice chunk of money if you're doing self-publishing. And I was making $15 a book doing that for my first book. People would buy 100 books. I would give away 50 books and they'd buy 100 more because there's 150 people at the event and 50 wasn't enough for everybody. So they decided just to buy the extra 100. I sold to them at a discount, 25% off the 20 bucks. So it's $15. I cost me 350. I made 1150 per book. Even taking out the money for the first 50 books, I still was making good money. It was on top of whatever I was being paid, and I was getting in front of the right audience, and they were walking away with my book, right? So leverage the book.
This is wild. We're peeling back the layers of the onion here. I remember when I first realized that almost every book in the library has the little gold New York Times bestseller sticker on it. And I'm like, how's that possible? There can only be one. Turns out not. And then thinking about, I've been to a dozen or more of these speaking engagements in the last, I'd say 18 months. And I got a bookshelf over there full of books that I got for free just for attending. You're shedding light on the fact that's the event coordinator probably had to pay for those books. And, I'm reaping the benefit because everything I've read so far has been helpful and impactful, at least with peeling back one more layer, if not giving me a true skill to use. This isn't, it's really, really, really eye opening to see the mechanics of how, the book part, which translates to exchange of knowledge, is really working. And it's awesome that, folks are out there able to really tell all their secrets, or at least 70 to 80%, and reserve the other 20 for paying clients.
Yeah, let me address that actually. I'll make a quick point that when you have a book, you have access to a different revenue stream because sometimes there are budgets for books when there are not budgets for speakers. And so if no one's being paid for breakout sessions at an in-person conference except for the keynote, they're being paid, but none of the breakout sessions are. But you're allowed to get a sponsor to cover the cost of books.
Hmm?
That's a different thing. Or they have access to a budget for education materials and then they buy books. That's just a thing to think about. But I am a big fan of giving people access to free content that helps them learn more about the problem that I know they have that they don't yet know they have. Because when this happens, they become better prospects, more educated prospects, and they become interested in the solution that I'm selling. So in my second book, I detail this in grave detail. I'm not the person who created this concept, but I have a slightly different way of talking about it. So what I call the little p problem is the problem they know they have and they're willing to admit. That's the little p problem. And then the big P problem is the problem that you know they have. So you look at them and you're like, oh yeah, I totally can diagnose this like right away. And you try to sell them a solution to the big P problem when they're only little p aware, right? They have these symptoms but they're not aware of the bigger problem. And it's like they're looking for a band-aid online and you're coming at them with a surgery suggestion. And they're like, what? You're not talking to me. And you're not talking to them. You're not. You're not connecting the dots. If you create content in any form, emails, social posts, books, podcasts that closes the gap like we are right now on this conversation between the problem people thought they had and they were aware of to the problem they now are starting to realize, oh, wow, I need to have reviews. This is making sense, but I don't know how to do that. Now they have a
You're
different
dropping
problem.
more frameworks, man.
They didn't have a problem before that. And now they start thinking, well, Robbie seems like he might have a solution. So then they become solution aware and they start looking at me and deciding whether they trust me to be the guide to help them implement that solution. And the last part of the process is a question of urgency. So at this point, the question is, what is the cost of inaction? So Cameron, right now, you're about to come out with a book. What if now that you know everything you know about the importance of reviews, what if you don't do anything about it? Do you still feel like you're going to have the goals met that you had, that you set for yourself? The cost of inaction, that's the question that you have to answer as a prospect. And if the cost is too high and you believe that I could help you and you believe the solution I'm presenting is possible and that it would benefit you, you come to me and like I have a 30-minute call. Someone's referred to me, they get access to my book, they watch a podcast interview maybe, they come in better informed. It's a 30-minute call with a 15-minute buffer. At minute 44, they're signed up. That is how you have product market fit. I don't oversell. The number one reason people have success is they're committed to doing the work. even when they're hiring me to implement, they still have a lot they have to do to get to the point where I have even names to implement. Like I can't come up. The only thing I can't do is come up with a list of names, right? It's their network.
Yeah,
So they have to be bought in on many levels. But when you have that product market fit, they they come in educated, and I can tell who comes to these 30-minute calls having done their work. I had someone who got referred, got the book. There was a 2-week delay between when they booked a call and actually got on the call. And in that time, they had read the book, taken action, made a list of 150 names, came into the call and was like, okay, now that I've done this, what else I got to do? At the end of the call, they're like, okay, we're working together. We started sending out her emails the following week. Her time frame was really short because of other constraints. If she hadn't done that pre-work, I couldn't have met her time frame even. Like it just wouldn't have been possible. But she was like doing all that work without me. Now, if she had not hired me, I think she still would have gone on to tell everybody else how great I was and that I had something really useful, right? It's not a waste of my time because it's better to meet with her and use my time to have a conversation with her, whether she hires me or not, than to have these tire kickers who are just out there doing entrepreneur TV and not taking any action. I would much rather have a conversation with someone who is engaged with the material and has actual conversations and questions in order to try to figure out how to move forward. She may not have had a budget, right? That's totally fine. She's still a person who's going to get better results because of our conversation, because of the material I put out. Yeah, that's that little arc of little p problem, big P problem, a solution aware, thinking about you like as a guide, and then the question of urgency. And that's all in smallest big results. I detail that. That's like
interesting.
another framework for new authors.
This conversation is almost proof of concept for you insofar as you've given me value and you've tricked me into believing that you're the expert that I need to continue consulting. And whether that's consuming more of your media, reading your books, reaching out to you for done for you instead of DIY solution, you know,
Uh-huh.
it's got the thought and the thinking. You mentioned the lady that you were just talking about being the kind of person who does a lot of pre-work and self-work and different things like that, and I fall squarely into that camp. I've been for about 18 months now researching nothing other than business building, advertising, marketing, leads, how to do write books and use that as part of it, every bit of it, and functionally doing the framework of like learn things, do things, teach things. That's kind of what I'm toying
Sure.
around with as
Yeah.
a concept. And there are limits to anybody's give a shit. You will hit a point in any content, any concept, anything that you're trying to do or employ where you're like, I don't want to do that part. And you're probably only going to hire someone that you trust to do it for you if you're the kind of person who's digging deep into the weeds on everything else. And you're going to want someone who digs deep into the weeds. Holding a conversation with you today is it's like it's real it's I'm feeling the pull towards you. And that's what you're talking about here. That's what the books are
It's
doing.
action based, right?
Yeah.
I don't chase people. I don't do funnels. I'm actually can we take a minute to talk about funnels versus pipelines? Because you're
Yeah,
deep in
absolutely.
learning about this, and I'm sure you've come across quite a few people talking about sales funnels. I now have such an aversion to this concept because a sales funnel visually is a V. And people come in the top of the V, and it's our job as the entrepreneur to keep them in the funnel and like keep moving them forward. They have no agency about it, and they don't know where we're leading them. Temple Grandin is one of the most famous autistic people in the world, and one of the things she's known for is she redesigned cattle ranches to calm the cattle as they headed to slaughter.
I was just telling someone about this yesterday.
And yes, those cattle were moved through the funnel more effectively and efficiently. But did they want to go where they were going? So
No, sir.
that's the visual I get when I see someone talking about sales funnels. A pipeline is a bit different. A pipeline is a series of possible steps that you move people through. I think you could flip it to be more of a mountain versus that V shape. You are inviting them on the journey with you. So let's use the mountain analogy. Someone is in near a really Mount Kilimanjaro. They're in the gift shop at the base of the mountain in the village nearby, looking at postcards of the summit, and they're thinking, "Oh, one day, one day." That could be your book, right? Just getting people thinking about it. Maybe it's a social post of yours. just to get them thinking about it. They come to the bottom of the mountain as a tourist, no plans to climb. They just looking up. One day, maybe they hopped on a meeting with you in a group setting to learn, right? They finally put some money into it. They go a group thing. Someone else, though, might do those first 2 steps and wanna skip the group thing, hire someone one-on-one, and just get going. And they should be able to. They should not be forced to be with a bunch of novices if they have already climbed 3 other peaks. They just need a local guide. They don't need the hand-holding that other people who are new to this need. So the pipeline allows them to design their own journey with you, and you just have lots of invitations. So you have the free offers, you have the 60, 90-minute, 2-hour option, you have the 1-day option maybe, you have a 12-week option maybe, you've got the 6-month package, you have the group version, which is the versus the one-on-one version. You just have different ways in, you mix and match. People can design their own experiences. And I'll go further and say, I've had programs where if you do one of the first 3 lower cost things, you can apply the money to the next level. So if you gave me $100 for one thing, you could apply the $100 to the $500 thing. If you do the $500 thing, you can apply it to the $3,000 thing. Why? Because someone who's gone through some of those first 3 steps then signs up for a one-on-one with me, which was, I think at the time, $25,000. I will take 3 grand off that because you have already done so much pre-work in a group setting that we're going to hit the ground running and you're going to get better results faster than someone who just decides on their own to just get right into the $25,000 offer, which was a harder offer to sell on its own without that pipeline. But that person also started further behind, and I had to still spend the first 3 months proving the value of the engagement because they weren't seeing results yet. So this is how I design, like, my design theory. And when I'm working with my clients and I'm helping them create pathways from the book to their business, I was doing this for a long time with there was no book, right? A lot of my clients didn't have books. Now, most of the people I'm working with have a book, not all. But how do you frame this to keep inviting people? So that's something I think about.
Robbie, that's exactly how I crafted my management style when I'm running a team of lawyers. I have a concept that my mentor taught me of meet people where they are, which didn't sit right with me. I reframed it as meet people where they are, get behind them, and give them a little scoop. But some people are going to be more resistant than others, but you just keep scoop. And that's interesting. So you can think of your marketing efforts and the ways of getting people into the higher tiers as the scoop. But if somebody's not willing to make that jump, I mean, you don't have to push that hard.
Right? You want to give them somewhere else to land, but
Yeah.
they have agency. You know, like right now, I run a monthly community. It's $100 a month. Do you see the range? I no
Yeah.
longer push this. My coaching prices I actually adjusted because it was like a year and a half or longer to land each person. Like it was a long cycle. And now I do these book things where literally people are being referred to me and in a 44-minute call, signing up for a $6,000 package or adding on some coaching and it's like a $7,500 package. And I'm just not sweating it's like I'm happy to do it. And then some of those people then could come back and want more coaching, right? Because now they realize they're this like, it's a very interesting moment when you have a book. Like authors at that moment are much more open to redesigning their whole business because they need the business to really be supported from the book and vice versa. So they are just, I think, at a better moment in their business cycle to be open to coaching. And now that I realize that, I'm just pushing harder on the author side, but you don't need a book to have the same conversations. It's like a thoughtful process. And I love strategy. I'm just like the why are we doing this is kind of the question. What are we solving for? Why are we doing this? Do these steps, even for my event design, like how I design in-person events or virtual events, people come in thinking, feeling, doing one thing. The end of your time together, you want them to be thinking, feeling, doing something else. Those are the transformations. These are the objectives. Should we have breakout rooms? Should we use a poll? Do we do a Mentimeter? All those questions get answered by the outcome. When you're talking about a book, what goes in the book, what doesn't go in the book, what stories do you share, what does the cover look like? Do you include all examples of women or do you want to have it be a mixed gender? All those things, the title you use should be based on What are people's transformational experience gonna be through the journey of this book, and where are you leading them? And so what you need the book to do should have some results later on, not just that you published a book. And that's where I think authors I actually really love we have some great hybrid publishers and assisted self publishers, which is sort of there's a Venn diagram between the 2 in the BizBook Pub Hub, and I love them because they ask these strategic questions at every point on the journey to make sure that these books that are being produced have a point, that they are related to an outcome, business related strategy, and it's not even clear to me that that's always happening for a traditionally published author. Like, once they're in and they've been vetted, the whole world changes in the, like, 2 years it takes for their book to come out. Like, you may have to redo the purpose of the book 6 times. So, you can't just assume it's one and done, and then 2 years later, the book comes out. And that's where I think working with these people, that was a missing piece. I couldn't find those kinds of vendors, those kinds of experts, and now we're all working collaboratively supporting to support these kinds of authors.
That's pretty cool. And so I know you specifically may not be too keen on helping write the book in the Biz Book Pub Hub. Did I get that right?
Mhm.
Is that marketplace helping with writing as well as design and marketing and all that other stuff?
Yeah, so we help you along the entire author journey, writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing. Some people do more of those things. Some people, like we have one person who helps you do analytics of your website and making sure you're strengthening the website so that it performs. We have people who are designing websites. We have people who are helping you create podcasts or get on podcasts, or like that's all the after stuff, or turning the book into a course or a course into a book. We have all of those things. But baseline, yeah, like you can jump in anywhere it makes sense, right? Like if you need a developmental editor to help you get the book in the first draft to even make sense to an intended audience, then you want to work with a developmental editor. If you feel like you have a strong sense of that, well, then you don't need that. You want to find someone who's going to do copy editing, right? And just make sure it passes muster for that. And then you still need a proofreader, need a formatter. And I personally have self-published in the truest sense where all of my books I've hired individual contributors that I've managed the team and I've managed the project. The first time it was because I had no money.
Right?
I had a few $100s that I had for this project at the time. And so I actually, like you, had to learn a lot because I hired someone from I don't know, it was Upwork or one of those. And she was designing in Word the format of the book, which in itself I don't have an actual problem with. It, she gave me the first version for the PDF of the paperback for me to, like, look over, and I'm like, "Why does this not look like a book?" And my wife walks by, she says, "Why is it Arial font?" I was like, "Oh my god, that's what the problem." Like, so I had to search gutter margins, because
Hmm.
the size of my book was different than what she was used to, and what goes the top and bottom of the book on each page, and, I mean, I had to handhold her on so many pieces, and I was, like, joking at some point. I had never intended to do a second book. I was like, "I'm gonna have to do a second book because, like, I've learned so much." And then paid for higher quality, more expert, more experienced people since then, and, you get better results and less stress. But I like managing all those pieces and having, like, ultimate control, but for someone else, that might be too much while you're writing a book, and then you hire someone, an assisted self-publisher or hybrid publisher to help you do that. They have the people on their teams, but that still lets you have a lot of say. Like they'll tell you like whether your idea makes sense or not. Hopefully provide you some feedback, but you will have more say so than you would if you were doing a traditionally published book, like on the price, the cover, the title. But hopefully they're steering you away from making like major faux pas that I think a lot of first time authors fall into. And it's not just that it has to be a good book, but it has to present it as if it was traditionally published. It should look and feel like a traditionally published book. There should be no obvious tell in the design or formatting, and there are lots of tells that are really subtle. And this is like Blink for Malcolm Gladwell. Like, how do you know at a glance that there's something off about this book? And
Right.
not everyone knows what's off about it, but that problem is needs to be resolved by having the experts who really understand those industry standards And what you're paying for is their expertise, not for the amount of time they spend on your book, but for all the time
Mhm.
they spend before your book to be able to produce that high quality outcome with less stress. And that's, I think, part of it. Especially, I work a lot with professional speakers. And if the plan is to bulk sell this to companies, you gotta have a book, like, they may have a book from, like, a Wiley or another major outlet, like, sitting next to your book on a table, and they have to look like they are comparable, or else there's a problem, I think, with this marketing tool. Um, but that's why I think going to BizBook PubHub. So you can go to bizbookpubhub.com just to do a little pitch there. And booklaunchbrainstorm.com is to have a conversation with me, learn how I do stuff, give away a ton of stuff. On that page, you're going to see some podcasts that I've been on where I talk about this, my books bonus content, just really trying to get information. I set a goal the other day, Cameron, of someone was, we were having a conversation. I was leading a group about like 3 years from now, what is your big goal going to be? And I was like, that was a question I posed to the group, and I was like, oh, I have to have an answer. So my big goal was I want to impact 1,000 authors in the next 3 years, and I want to be starting to shift the conversation for new authors about what those important metrics are versus the vanity metrics. So like less focus on just getting number one bestseller and more number one bestseller being a byproduct of strategic launch that's focused on reviews and waking up and engaging a pipeline. That would be like, I don't mean 1,000 people paying me either, right? I just mean that conversation has shifted, because in that world, my sales are a lot easier because I have to first tell people that the big problem exists, right? So like that's the problem when you do something unique, is I have to make sure people understand the big problem exists. And I think a lot of people listening have that problem. Like they're like, this doesn't make sense to everyone else, but I see it clearly. The more I can get people on the page of that, then my solution, and I know others are going to copy my solution, but nobody is me. I feel very confident in my ability to deliver great value. That's not the problem, because I have a unique set of skills. I'm also producing, emceeing, and managing like all the tech for a really awesome, kick-ass launch party that isn't about the book. It's about the offer that comes after. Why is it about that? Because we started with strategy. That's not something everyone can offer if they're just focusing on the book. They're not a strategist. They're not a Zoom expert. So, you got to lean into your own skill sets when you work into this. And I think what you're doing, like researching your way into a business, is really smart. But you can save yourself time sometimes by being around other people who will help you vet the information as you're getting it. So, all right, more on that later, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, the passion is shining through, the confidence is shining through. I'm a believer in you. I think, on the grand scheme of the today's modern world, the access to information that helps you DIY has become astronomically easier. And
Mhm.
now with AI, you have basically, as long as you can figure out how to use it, ridiculously cheap and fast done for you services that are, it's just at your fingertips now. And I find that to be a little bit wild. I find it to be partly good and partly bad. First of all, for people who care, for people who are going to put in the thought, for people who are actually going to like know what they're doing, it's going to be world changing, right? To be able to use tools that make everything faster, quicker, and maybe even a little bit more accurate or slightly more artsy, or however you want to put it. That email you're talking about, we could use AI to help craft the email that you send to your network, so it doesn't sound like, a guy who has no emotional intelligence just begging for reviews. But I worry, and this is actually partly what forms the reason why I'm writing my book, that we're all going to stop learning, to stop double checking, to stop asking the next question. And with the small percentage of people, 1% of people who are willing to learn a skill and then basically put most of the information about that skill out online, the other 99% are going to lose the ability to actually figure something out when they don't have access to folks like you, when they don't have access to AI or the internet or anything like that.
Well, it's hard to imagine a world where people are just going and living among the Amish and not connected to the internet. So I think, as long as you have a phone in your pocket, you have access to information. Is it the right information? Are you asking the right questions? Are you getting the right search results? Was the strategy you were looking into the right strategy? Did you give it enough time? Did you give it enough effort? Was it the right goal? I mean, this is all the reasons we still need coaches. Coaches need coaches. We need someone else to read the label. We're sitting inside the jar. It doesn't work, you
Yeah.
know? So I surround myself with people who are curious and remain curious. I'm not a fan of using tech for tech's sake, but I am a fan of using tech to be more efficient. So I didn't use AI for my first two books because it wasn't around. My third book, it was just showing up, but I was knee deep, elbow deep, neck deep. I mean, I was writing the book. I was like in 30,000, 50,000 words in. So this latest book, I did go back and forth with it, and it was my content. Like I had transcripts I was working from. I wasn't asking. I think the danger is when people say, "I want to," they tell AI, "I want to write a book about leadership. Give me the top 10 leadership challenges." Okay, now I'm turn that into 10 paragraphs. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Now turn it into 10 chapters. Okay, now give me a worksheet. It's not original content. It's gonna come across as no original content. It's gonna be flat, it's gonna be boring, it's gonna be generic, and it's gonna be useless. That is a really bad idea, and I'm okay with the fact people are doing it because it's very obvious, and they're gonna make the
Yeah.
rest of us who take the time to have some original thought or original research or based on our lived experience, share our efforts and our clients' efforts and the outcomes and do the storytelling, which ChatGPT does not do the storytelling for you. That's going to be the differentiator. All these people who are like, write a bestseller in a weekend, I'm not a fan. I first of all, I'm not a fan of the whole bestseller push period. I think we need to stop using
Fair.
that language. And the whole like get it done in a weekend. Could you create a concept? Could you create a strong draft or at least like a strong outline and maybe even the very beginning of a rough draft book, a book done? I mean, not in any quality sense. I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure I can be proven wrong. I can be proven wrong. I don't know if everybody we're marketing that to has the capacity to pull it off at a high level. Are there exceptions? Yes. There's actually someone that has regularly followed my books and gotten great results and never paid me. He's one of my biggest champions, and he just wrote me the other day. He's like, "God, you did it again." I have another. He's like multiple books out, and he's like, and he's a guy who's like his last book, his third book was like, "I have a 1,000-day marketing plan," and he meant it. He like had 1,000. So now he's got this other book coming out, and he's like, "I'm doing your thing, like." It's all working, and it's not someone who's brand new, right? Like the fact that I can offer something of value to someone who has that level of can-do-ness and experience, right, tells me that's differentiator right there than someone who's just regurgitating. So I'm not too worried about the regurgitation or the people who are not learning because those of us that are still willing to put the human aspect in. And I want to say that when I was talking to ChatGPT about my fourth book, and it's very, I'm very like, these are the steps. It was ChatGPT that was like, well, here, here, and here, they might be feeling a little anxious and concerned. You may want to address that. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, ChatGPT just called me out on not being human enough. Like,
Yeah.
they're absolutely right. I was like, went in and I softened those sections, addressed the reader, like acknowledged kind of where they are in their journey. And I was just so busy just getting the data parts out of my brain. And I went back and I layered that in, and it's such a better book. Now, I could have had a developmental editor working with me, but I was further along than what I need. I didn't need, like, I might have needed one, and I think the development editor would have gotten me there as well. I don't discount that. Human experience would have been a great book. I had the book mostly written. It was a little bit in the wrong time frame. Like if you were just getting
Mhm.
started, go grab a developmental editor. If it's 99% written, they're gonna tell you to rewrite it if it's really bad, and you're gonna be annoyed. So,
Oh,
if you think
yeah.
that might happen, go hire them first. Like, it's just gonna be an easier process. So, I just think I value editors. I value, these developmental editors and copy editors. Grammarly is not a replacement for an editor, but if you run your book through Grammarly before handing it off to the editor, they focus less time on fixing your commas, and they can focus on the flow, right? Like, if you don't
Yeah.
run it through Grammarly, they gotta fix all your commas, and they might not have as much time or energy, or it might cost you 3 times as much to have them do that. So, like, use the AI tool, because Grammarly is an AI tool, to help you create a better content and then use the humans to like, by the way, I didn't just go from ChatGPT to publication. I had beta readers and I had different kinds of beta readers. I had people who knew a lot about my topic. I had my wife who knows nothing about my topic. And she was helpful because she was like, what is hybrid in this context? And I was talking about hybrid publishing.
Yeah,
And I was like, "Oh, I have to go through all the," and I was like, "AI, can you tell me all the definition all the words I have to define?" And it gave me a list of
yeah,
words I might wanna define. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I should define those words." But the person who helped me the most was a client who had just gone through my online program, which is like the DIY version of my coaching program. She's in my membership community. She had some one-on-one, like, feedback there in the group setting, like a hot seat, but she went through my online program, got great results. I helped her do her launch party. She had just learned a lot of the material, so her response, her feedback was the most beneficial to me as an author before going live. So you need humans, but you also need to figure out what the right question is. Like, if you get better at asking the right question, you'll find the right kind of coach, the right kind of mentor, and the right kind of AI prompt. The skill is still what's the right question, and then what's the right tool to get the answers you're looking for. And you can start with an AI prompt, get a bunch of responses, and then go to a trusted human to sift through them. Because, by the way, just sitting and reading lots of books for 2 years is not gonna help you become the best entrepreneur in the world. There's a point at which you actually have to do some things and, make some missteps. I have 3 books I give every new entrepreneur. And I'm whenever I get on a call with someone and I'm feeling itching now to share them with you, so I will in a moment. But I'm just like, that's how I would respond to your thoughts about this. I think that you're onto something, and I wouldn't worry about the people who are trying to take shortcuts, because I don't think it's gonna work out well for them. And it's gonna actually help showcase the rest of us who are making effort.
yeah. I think that's a very interesting insight. I do think still I want in my heart of hearts, I think the collective IQ of the world is going to plummet, even though the IQ of the rest of us who keep, because everything when it came with YouTube, when it came with, and this is the concept of my book. Like I'm a little afraid that people are going to stop learning, so I want to write something that encourages people to learn. And what you were just talking about is almost precisely the framework and the reason. I'm gonna build a framework. It's something I've been working on for a long time of how to figure out what you need to research next. Whatever it is you want to do, there's something you need to know. If you've ever been the person who said, well, if I had known that, you could have asked the question, right? So for me, it just seems obvious to ask more questions. I've been living with a dictionary in my pocket or on my phone since I was 13 years old. I have 300 and something web pages open on my phone, just Google searches. That's all it is. Because I heard something when I was out in the world and I was like, interesting. And I Googled it for later research. This all is like inherent to me. And I know most people aren't like that. And I want to take the paradigm shift and I want to force everyone, if I can, I know I'm not going to be able to, but I want to force everyone to just like develop an instinct for inquiry is kind of the way I'm pitching it. And you have that. And that's why I'm really loving this conversation. And I'm having a great time talking to you. I know we're coming up on, the end of the conversation, but I have one more question before I let you go. I heard on another podcast, I heard you passionately raving about roasted vegetables with an
Really?
air fryer. I recently discovered the same thing. And I'm interested, so I'm a zucchini squash guy. What's your favorite vegetable?
That's hysterical. Wow, what deep research you did. In an air fryer, my go-to would be like cauliflower and broccoli. My kids particularly like the broccoli, but it takes so much less time. Like zucchini, I usually do in a frying pan. Actually, zucchini, I just slice down the middle and put face down and then flip it and then cut it and let it cook a little more. My wife likes it less cooked and I like it a little more, but that way you don't overcook it while you're trying to do 3 other things. If you don't cut into smaller pieces, it won't get to mush. But yeah, cauliflower, I mean, the idea that I have to turn on an oven and heat it up to, 350, 400, and then wait, it's like it's done in 7 minutes. Broccoli's done in 6 minutes. It's incredible, and that's my go-to.
Dude, I have, a Ninja air fryer that has, like, a bake, air roast, setting, all that other stuff, and then it has, like, a sheet pan, and for me and my wife, if I put half of that sheet pan is whatever meat I want cubed up, and then whatever potato I want, whatever onion I want, and whatever green vegetable I want, toss in oil, seasoning on top, you set it to like 400 for 20 minutes, and it preheats in 30 seconds. So literally the whole meal, 30 minutes it takes, 40 minutes if it takes me too long to cut the meat. Uh, it's it's a huge hack. Like everybody talks about crockpot meals, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I like them, but they're not great. But a sheet pan meal that takes 30
Yeah,
minutes to do, oh, game over. And
love
once you
it.
find your favorite seasoning from like McCormick or something like that, you
Mhm.
don't even have to think about the seasoning. It's just same seasoning, same oil, same everything. It's amazing.
I love that for you. That's awesome, and also not something someone has dug up to ask me about. That's pretty cool.
I'll tell you, if you ever get on a grill, slice your zucchini squash face down on a grill with some seasoning. That's awesome. But
Does
super
it?
high heat for like 3 minutes.
Yeah. You
And you
gotta
can
pay
do the same.
attention.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I just discovered cooking like 3 years ago, and it's been a great passion.
Awesome. So how do
All
you
right, Robbie.
we wrapping it?
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. So great to
Immensely.
meet you. I'm undoubtedly going to keep in touch with you and perhaps maybe force you to be a beta reader of my book. If anyone wants to find you, where do they go?
So robbiesamuels.com is everything I do, but specifically booklaunchbrainstorm.com if they want to learn more about my author services and the book that I mentioned, and bizbookpubhub.com if they want to check out all the resources that I've created with these fellow experts, great author community, free events, podcast, etc. So those are the three places. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So definitely look for me there and let me know how we met so I can say hi that way as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. It's great having you, Robbie.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what you're doing next and enjoy the rest of your day. I don't know how to sign off of these things. Have fun.
Cheers.
All right, bud. Bye.